No secretary lasted a week with the Wolf CEO until she said something that drove him crazy. "Are you completely useless?" The words echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. A second later, the crystal glass hit the marble floor and shattered, scattering in a glittering ring around Elena's shoes. For an instant, time seemed to freeze, fragments suspended in the air, droplets hovering like tiny stars. Then everything returned to normal all at once. The sound echoed. People turned around, and the CEO of Wolf Industries took a slow and deliberate step toward it. Elena felt the weight of every gaze, every whisper, every breath held behind her. Even the soft background music seemed to fade into nothingness. The Wolf Tower lobby had always seemed too large, cold marble, even colder people. But now, under Adrian Wolf's penetrating gaze, she felt microscopic. He didn't scream. He didn't need to. His voice had a sharper precision than any scream. "I told you," he repeated, more slowly this time. "You are completely useless." Her throat tightened. She swallowed hard. This wasn't the first time someone with a lot of money and little empathy had spoken to her that way. But something about the way Adrian said it, the disgust, the superiority, the calculated coldness, made her feel that the stain on the floor wasn't the only thing he wanted to erase. "I'm so sorry, sir," she stammered, quickly kneeling down. "I'll clean it right away." The cleaning cart was behind her, still tilted where the wheel had gotten caught on the carpet. She was hurriedly crossing the VIP corridor, trying to go unnoticed during rush hour. Her supervisor always said, "Move fast, stay silent, become invisible, invisibility." That was the job. But this time, invisibility betrayed her. She hadn't seen the edge of the rug. She hadn't seen the leg of the table. She hadn't seen the glass fall. Now all eyes were on her, and the wolf was tearing her apart with nothing but a look. "You should have prevented this before it happened," he snapped. Some people let out a discreet sigh. The phrase bordered on the absurd, almost comical, if it didn't come from a man who could fire her for breathing incorrectly. He crouched slightly, not to help, but to get closer, as if he were examining the contamination on the immaculate floor of his lobby. "You're paid," he said, emphasizing each word, "to keep everything spotless, to avoid problems, to be invisible. And you can't even do that." Her cheeks burned. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Her hands trembled as she gathered the shards. "Sorry," she whispered. "No," he said curtly. "I have no regrets. I am competent." A shard cut his finger. A thin trickle of blood instantly gushed out and dripped onto the marble. She took a deep breath. "Ah, how wonderful," he mocked. "Now you're bleeding on it." Something was churning in his chest, not anger, not humiliation, something older, something exhausted. She pressed a paper towel against the cut, and in silence, without thinking, she murmured the phrase that would trigger a chain reaction neither of them could have imagined. "Relax, sir. At least this stain will come out." She sighed. Some things just don't come out. The lobby fell silent. An absolute and terrifying silence. Her words floated in the air like smoke, fragile and dangerous. Only when Elena raised her eyes did she realize how deeply they had affected her. The temperature seemed to drop. Adrian Wolf stood motionless, very quiet. His eyes, cold as steel moments before, now seemed haunted, as if someone had dragged a ghost from his past and placed it before him. His chest rose sharply, his jaw clenched, his face paled so quickly that he looked as if he were carved from marble. "What did you say?" he whispered. She blinked. "I just said I'll clean it, sir." "No," he replied, his voice tense. "The other part." Her heart skipped a beat. Some things just don't happen. There it was again. Recognition or fear or something darker. Adrian straightened up slowly, like a man emerging from a memory he didn't want anyone to see. He didn't yell, he didn't curse, he didn't even breathe properly. Instead, he said, "Get up." She stood up, trembling, running her hands over her uniform. "Follow me." "Sir, I still need—" I said, "Follow me." His voice left no room for discussion. He walked toward the private elevator, and the crowd parted for him like a curtain. No one dared speak. No one dared move. Elena glanced at Ava, who was at the reception desk, and she murmured, Go. Just go. The elevator doors closed around them with a soft, final click. Inside, Elena felt the walls closing in on her. The mirrored panels reflected her nervous expression, amplifying her anxiety. Adrian stood beside her, rigid, his hands clasped behind his back and his gaze fixed ahead. He was no longer angry. That was terrifying. She could understand anger. Anger had rules. This silence, this tension, this strange mix of shock, calculation, and something he was desperately trying to hide. That made her heart race. The elevator went up, passing the common offices, the boardrooms, the conference floors. The doors opened. Adrian left. She followed. His office seemed like a place untouched by time, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the entire city, dark and precise furniture, each object exactly in its place. No coziness, no softness, a wolf's den constructed from glass and energy. "Close the door," he said. Yes, she did. To sit. She sat on the edge of a leather chair, her hands clenched so tightly that her fingers went numb. His steps were slow, deliberate, predatory. "Do you always talk like that?" he asked. "Like what?" "As if you knew things," he said quietly. "Things you shouldn't know." "I don't know anything, sir," she said. "I was just talking about the stain." He let out a humorless laugh. "Do you think I'm angry because of the glass?" She remained silent. "I don't care about the glass," he murmured. "What matters to me is what you said." She frowned. "Sir, I swear I didn't mean anything personal." "That's the problem," he said. "It wasn't anything personal, and yet it hit exactly where it shouldn't have." He circled her slowly, studying her as if trying to see through her skin. "You know nothing about me," he said finally. "And you know nothing about me," she whispered. "But that didn't stop you from calling me useless." He stopped. For a moment, just a moment, something akin to shame crossed her face. Then he disappeared. "Where are you from, Morales?" he asked. She blinked. "Why does it matter?" "Because if you're working in my building, I want to know what you're bringing into it." She hesitated. "Maple Street." He stood motionless. "Behind the old Everline textile factory," she added. His chest rose with slow, trembling breaths. "How long did you live there?" "All my life," she said. "Why?" He didn't answer. "Everline," he murmured almost to himself. "Of course." She frowned. "Is there a problem?" He didn't answer. His mind was elsewhere, somewhere dark. "I'm going to ask you something," he said, "and I want the truth." She nodded. "What do you remember about the Everline fire?" She held her breath. Memories hit her like lightning. Smoke. Sirens. The mother yelling at the father to take Miguel outside. The air so thick it felt alive. Lawyers in expensive suits promising they would take care of everything. "I remember enough," she whispered. He turned abruptly, looking out the window, and she realized he wasn't interrogating her. He was losing control. Adrian spoke without turning around. "When I was 14, he said quietly. "The factory where my father worked caught fire." Elena froze. "It wasn't Everline," he continued. "It wasn't the same building, but the same kind of betrayal. A company that knew its equipment was defective, a board of directors that ignored the warnings, a legal team that made the disaster disappear." A shiver ran down his spine. "I remember the smoke," he said. "The snow falling that night. The men in suits telling us it was an accident, telling us that nothing could be done." His fists were clenched at his sides. "And I remember the foreman looking at the flames and saying, 'Some things don't come off with water, kid.'" Her heart stopped. "I had forgotten those words," Adrian whispered. "Or perhaps I forced myself to forget them. But when you said them, when they came out of your mouth, I felt as if the past grabbed me by the neck." He finally turned around. "And I need to know why." Before she could answer, his office phone rang, a sharp, sudden ring cutting the moment to shreds. He ignored it. "Rest a little," he said abruptly. "We're not finished yet. I still have my shift." "Not tonight," he said. "Go home." "But sir, and—" Her voice had changed. A thin crack ran through it, small but unmistakable. She left. But as soon as the elevator doors closed behind her, Elena had the distressing feeling that she wasn't escaping her problems. She was walking further and further inside, and the worst was yet to come. The following night, the city was flooded by rain. Water streamed down the glass walls of the Wolf Tower like tears. People rushed inside, waving umbrellas and kicking their feet to push away the puddles. Elena clocked in at 6:58 p.m., tying her hair back and rolling up her sleeves. Her supervisor barely glanced at her. 23rd floor tonight, he said. Don't rush. The executives left early. She made her way to the elevators, pushing her cleaning cart amidst the noise of the employees leaving for the evening. But when he reached the executive corridor, he stopped abruptly. Raised voices echoed off the polished walls. "You can't do that, Adrian," a man's voice, furious. "Watch me," Adrian replied, calm and lethal. Eleanor approached. Victor Kane, a senior executive and notorious traitor, stood there, red with rage, his fists clenched, practically trembling with fury. "If you fire me now, you'll be firing the best strategist you have. You falsified financial reports," Adrian said. "You forged my signature. You stole—" Victor scoffed. "Please, everyone here steals. You just don't like being reminded that you're human." He turned around, and his eyes landed on Elena. His expression contorted. "Sir, great. The janitor again." She stiffened. Without thinking, Adrian took a step slightly ahead of her. "Be careful what you say," he warned. Victor let out a shrill laugh. "What? She's going to run to the press. With what money, Adrian?" He walked past her, deliberately brushing against her shoulder. "Take the opportunity to clean up the mess he makes," he mocked. "Someone has to do it." Then he stormed into the elevator and disappeared. The hallway fell silent. Adrian didn't move. For several long seconds, he simply stood there, breathing heavily, rage simmering beneath the surface, but controlled. Then, "Morales, here we go again." She approached cautiously. "Yes, sir." His expression was indecipherable. "How long did you live behind Everline?" he asked again. "Why do you keep asking that?" she whispered. "Because," he said, lowering his voice, "I think you know something that you don't even realize you know." His heart raced. "I'll take you somewhere," he said. "Where?" "To the truth." And he led her down the hallway to a locked metal door that she had never noticed before. The door slid open with a cold hiss. Dust and frigid air greeted them. This room wasn't for employees, nor for executives. Sometimes, not even for lawyers. It was a graveyard of secrets. And somewhere inside was the file that would change everything. Adrian pulled out a large beige folder with the inscription Everline and dropped it onto the steel table. The echo vibrated through Elena's bones. "Open it," he said. Yes, she did. And the world changed. Money stolen, families deceived, promises broken, pain turned into profit, and his company, his empire, was built on those ashes. She looked up, her eyes burning. "You built this place with our lives," she whispered, "with our suffering." He didn't deny it. He did not hesitate. He simply said, "Try." A single word, carrying the weight of an entire ruined history. His chest ached with fury, sadness, and betrayal. He watched her in silence. Then he said, "Tomorrow is the council meeting. They want to destroy this file, erase all traces of what happened." She stared intently at him. "And what do you want?" she asked. His answer would change everything. "I want you in that room." Eleanor stood paralyzed, her hand still resting on the folder. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her, illuminating row after row of silent evidence. Each document was a tombstone for someone's misery, a story of suffering buried beneath the corporate veneer, and Adrian Wolf wanted her in the meeting room. It seemed impossible, absurd, terrifying. But when their eyes met, she understood. He wasn't asking as CEO. He was asking how a man who had finally seen the monster within himself and needed someone to ensure he didn't look away again, could do. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you don't lie," he said, "and because I'm no longer going to let men like Victor decide what this company stands for." She swallowed hard. "You're placing too much responsibility on someone who makes a living cleaning toilets. One day in this building," he replied, "and you've already done more for it than half the executives upstairs." He was serious. She could feel it. He walked her back to the elevator. Neither of them said a word. The tension was so palpable you could touch it. When they reached the lobby floor, she got out. He didn't do that. "You should sleep," he said softly. "I doubt he can." He almost smiled. "Tomorrow," he said, "everything changes. For both of us." The doors closed. Elena remained motionless for a few seconds before stepping out into the foggy night. The city lights scattered across the wet asphalt like splashes of paint. His mind was racing. The settlement. Her father's hands trembling in the smoke. Her mother's screams. The community crumbling. The look on Adrian's face when she said, "Some things don't crumble." Tears stung her eyes, but she held them back. Not tonight. Tomorrow she would face people who didn't see her. Tomorrow she would enter a room that was strange for someone like her. Tomorrow she would face a table full of wolves and refuse to look away. She was sitting at the bus stop. Her cell phone vibrated. "Miguel, sister, are you okay? You're late." She typed, "Yes, tomorrow is a big day." "Miguel, is everything all right at work?" She hesitated. Then he wrote, "No, but maybe it will happen." On the other side of town, in his penthouse, Adrian was alone, staring at the Everline archive. He didn't see the horizon. He saw smoke, snow. His father's empty eyes, a 14-year-old boy learning that decency didn't protect him from anything. "You've become exactly what you hated," he whispered, and for the first time, he hated that too. Elena followed Adrian through the silent corridors of the 28th floor. Each step echoed, as if the entire building were watching. He walked quickly, but not recklessly. There was a purpose in every movement, as if something inside him had finally awakened after years of torpor. They stopped in front of a reinforced metal door, with no windows, no signage, and no visible doorknob. A room whose existence no one should know about. Adrian brought his badge close, typed in a code, and then placed his palm over a circular sensor. The lock released with a dry sound. The door opened. A frigid air escaped from the interior, mingling with the smell of old documents and inactive electronics. The fluorescent lights gradually switched on, revealing a long room with walls packed with physical files and silent servers, a corporate graveyard, a place made to hide sins, not to catalogue them. "Come in," said Adrian. Elena hesitated for a second, but she went in. He followed her, and the door slammed shut with a bang that disgusted him. Adrian walked over to one of the metal drawers, pulled hard, and took out a thick folder with a red stamp. Elena felt her heart race. He placed the folder on the table in the center of the room. The sound reverberated like a judge's gavel. "Open," he said. She opened it, and the ground seemed to disappear beneath his feet. Photos of the fire. Maintenance records ignored, technical reports falsified, forged signatures, reduced settlement offers, money diverted to intermediary accounts, families deceived, silenced, discarded, and at the top of the final document, in cold, office-style lettering, Elena gripped the edge of the table until her fingers ached. "My father, my neighbors, we were betrayed," she whispered. "You knew." Her voice wasn't accusatory. It was much worse. It was the voice of someone who finally understands the magnitude of the injustice. Adrian didn't look away. "I wasn't the one who conceived all of this," he said, "but I was the one who received the empire already built, and I never bothered to find out how it had been built." He ran his hand through his hair, visibly disturbed. "For a long time, I believed that looking to the past was a sign of weakness. Now I see that it's cowardice." Eleanor looked up, her eyes still filled with tears. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you saw what I didn't want to see." He took a deep breath. "And because tomorrow the council will vote to destroy these files." She froze. "Destroy as if nothing had happened." "Exactly." She pressed her lips together, anger burning beneath her skin. "And what do you want to do?" Adrian gripped the back of the chair as if he needed to steady himself. "I want to set the record straight, expose everything, prevent them from erasing the past." He hesitated. "But I can't do it alone." Eleanor stared at the open folder, the lives inside, the lies, the silence, the pain. Then she looked at him, the arrogant man who had humiliated her in the lobby, the same man who now seemed devoid of all his composure and power. A wolf lost in his own den. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Because you speak the truth," he replied with the same intensity, "and in this company, the truth has become a luxury." Silence. Heavy. Dense. Transformer. Finally, Elena said, I am nobody, sir. You are exactly the person they need to hear from." She swallowed hard. "What if they try to silence me?" Adrian gave a half smile, the kind of smile that precedes a dangerous promise. "I won't let that happen." Her eyes widened. "I want you with me tomorrow," he declared, "to help me prevent the destruction of this file." She remained motionless, as if the world were trying to tear her from her place. "Sir, this could be the end for me. This could also be the end of me," he said, "but some things can't be erased." Eleanor took a deep breath, and for the first time since the day of the fire, he felt that maybe, just maybe, someone powerful was finally willing to face the truth. "I'll go," she said. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, as if this were the answer he both feared and desired. When he opened it, his expression was one of pure firmness. "So get ready, Elena Morales. Tomorrow we will face people who think they will never be held accountable for anything." He touched the folder and closed it slowly. "We're going to prove them wrong." The dawn brought no relief. The city seemed silent, perhaps out of respect for what was about to happen atop Wolf Tower. Eleanor entered the elevator alone, clutching the hem of her blouse to disguise the slight trembling in her hands. The digital display showed the floors one by one, as if counting down the seconds to the inevitable. 28, 29, 30. His heart seemed to race along with the elevator. When the doors opened, Adrian was already waiting for him. He was wearing the same black suit as the day before, but something was different. There was no arrogance, no calculated coldness. There was determination, and something that seemed like humanity. "You came," he said. She took a deep breath. "I told you I would come." He nodded slightly, acknowledging her courage without exaggeration. "So, let's go." The two walked side by side down the silent corridor. It was like walking through the eye of a hurricane about to awaken. The double doors to the meeting room were ajar. Murmurs came from inside. Important people, dangerous people, people who never imagined they would run into the very person who cleaned the building's floors. Adrian stopped before entering. "From the moment we walk through that door," he said, "there will be no turning back." Eleanor clenched her hands tightly, bracing for combat. "Yes, I know. And no matter what happens," he continued, "don't let them devalue your story." She nodded. The two breathed together, and he pushed the door open. All 12 members were present. Rigid faces, expensive clothes, eyes that refused to believe what they saw, and Victor Kane, grinning like a vulture over a carcass. "Adrian," said the chair of the board, Clara Verne, adjusting her glasses, "before we begin, we need to clarify exactly why there is a cleaning lady in this room," Adrian replied without hesitation. "Because she's part of the problem." The room became freezing. Victor let out a short, venomous laugh. "My God, Adrian, now you're speaking on behalf of the cleaning ladies." He turned to Elena. "I hope you brought a broom. You'll need it when all this is over." Elena didn't move, but Adrian stepped forward. His gaze was pure steel. "One more word like that," he said calmly, "and you'll be escorted out of this room by security." Victor opened his mouth and closed it. Adrian placed the Everline folder in the center of the table. Clara frowned. "We thought this was already resolved." "He was buried," Adrian corrected, and then he opened the folder. Documents, photos, falsified reports, suspicious transactions, all scattered across the table like a body being dissected. "Do you see this?" he said. "These are documents that prove Wolf Industries profited from a disaster that destroyed lives." "That's in the past," said one of the advisors. "And the past doesn't erase the wounds," Adrian retorted. He pointed at Elena. Her family was one of those affected. Everyone looked at her, but not in the way he feared. It seemed that, for the first time, they were being forced to see the human being behind the statistics. "Mrs. Morales," Clara said cautiously, "could you explain why you're here?" Elena took a deep breath. Her hands were trembling, yes, but her voice, when she spoke, was firm. "The Everline factory caught fire when I was 8 years old," she began. "We lost almost everything. My brother, Miguel, couldn't breathe properly for weeks. They said we would receive help. We didn't. They said there would be justice. There wasn't." She looked at the table, at the photos, at the past that never disappeared. "You moved on. We didn't." Silence, heavy, uncomfortable. "And to know that the company where I spend entire nights scrubbing floors," she continued, "helped cover all of this up. It hurts. It hurts in a way you can't imagine." The chair of the board crossed her fingers. "Mr. Wolf," she said, "are you asking us to take responsibility for something that happened 20 years ago?" "I'm asking you to take responsibility for what still exists today," Adrian replied, "and for what still hurts real people today." Victor slammed his hands on the table. "Enough. He's emotionally unstable. He wants to destroy the company out of sheer cheap sentimentality." Adrian turned around. "Sentimentalism is believing that money can buy absolution." He approached Victor, face to face. "You stole, falsified, and manipulated numbers for years, and you still think you have the right to call me unstable?" "Victor is a coward. I manage a significant portion of this company's investments," he said. "Without me, you would all collapse." "Then we will fall apart together," Adrian replied. "Either that or the truth will fall apart on its own. And then, you're fired, Victor." The man froze. "You can't." "I can." And Adrian answered the phone. "Security, meeting room." Victor shook his head in disbelief. "Do you know what you're doing? You're going to destroy your own career." Adrian replied with deadly calm. "I'd rather lose my empire than continue being the kind of man who maintains it." The door opened. 2 security guards entered. Victor was led outside, still screaming, but no one else dared to say anything. Adrian went back to the table. "Today we vote on whether Wolf Industries will be complicit in the silence or an agent of repairs." Clara took a deep breath. Then he asked, "And what do you propose, Adrian?" He did not hesitate. "Reopening of the Everline case. Full payment of what was denied. Interest. Assistance to the families. And an external audit of all mergers over the last 20 years. A man almost fell out of his chair. "This will cost hundreds of millions. And it's worth every penny," Adrian replied. Clara looked at Elena, then at Adrian, then at the file, and finally to the other council members. "Let's vote." One by one, hands began to rise, some reluctant, others ashamed, others determined. The majority voted yes. It was official. Justice would finally begin. Elena couldn't stop feeling her eyes burning. Adrian looked at her. There was something akin to pride in his gaze, and something more. Something he still didn't have the courage to name. That night, Adrian recorded the video. No production, no makeup, no editing. He sat down at a simple table with the Everline folder in plain sight, and he said, "Today, Wolf Industries takes responsibility for what it tried to erase. We can't fix the past, but we can fix the present." He breathed. "The credit for this doesn't belong to me. It belongs to someone who reminded me that some truths cannot be buried." The camera cut off the image. Elena was behind. "Was that all?" she asked. "Yes, it was," Adrian replied. And for the first time since he met him, he seemed relieved. Days later, Miguel received the official letter. His mother cried. The neighbors celebrated. The whole neighborhood seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and strange as it may seem, the Wolf Tower too. The employees seemed less tense, the hallways less cold, the CEO less distant. Elena continued cleaning the 23rd floor, but now people were greeting her. Adrian. He started showing up more often, sometimes just to ask how she was, sometimes to walk her to the elevator, sometimes just to be around. One afternoon, at the end of the workday, he found her in the lobby. Elena, he called. She turned around. Thank you, he said, with a sincerity that left her breathless. Why, she asked. Because they wouldn't let me be the man I was becoming. She smiled discreetly. It was you who decided to change. No, she corrected herself quietly. You reminded me that I still could. They stood there for a moment, in silence, and a silence that didn't hurt, a silence filled with what was yet to come. Their journey began with shards of glass on the floor. Now it was something completely different, something that neither of them could deny anymore. Subscribe for more stories like this. Which part shocked you the most? Tell me in the comments.